你幫下我，帶我去揾返真正嘅你。
So welcome everyone to this Q&A about the movie Shadows. We have with us today the director, Glenn Chan. Welcome. And I'll get straight to it. Your movie talks about one of those fundamental questions of human nature and morality. Are we basically inherently good or evil? How do you approach that subject, and what do you think about it?
Well, I think there's no one answer for that, I feel. I don't think we're either good or evil. I think we are definitely capable of good and evil, that's for sure. I think what this film actually tries to say is actually that we are all capable of good and evil, but it's just a matter of how our lives are that steers us one certain direction. I think that's what this film is really about in that sense, because of the characters that were there and the way the crime was committed based on a very personal reasons, I would say. Yeah.
And is that something that attracted you to the movie, to the script?
Yeah, I think I was attracted to it because of the morality of it, the gray area of the whole thing. Because the film was actually kind of like inspired by Carl Jung's theory of the shadow, where everybody has this shadow side. And it's a matter of whether we embrace it or not that kind of shows whether we can live our lives in a certain way. So I was attracted to the gray area of morality in terms of why human beings do certain things and why they don't, yeah.
And we do see that with the main character. At the beginning of the movie, it seems as if it is a fight between good and evil, that we have a clear-cut example of one psychiatrist being good and one being evil, but through the movie, it seems that becomes muddled. Yeah. And in the end, we do have to ask ourselves, who do we believe?
Yeah, I think that's the whole point of it. I think the whole point of the show is actually just to ask, at the end of the movie, it's basically like a judgment call, right? So it's up to the audience to kind of judge whether the lead character actually did it or not. And if you judge that the character did it, then it says something about you. If you say that it didn't, then it says something about you as well. So I think it's deliberately open-ended in that sense, because I feel that, like I said earlier, everybody's capable of good and evil. It depends on which direction you're pushed, so that you choose a side, I guess. Yeah.
And in that sense, is it true that you're also criticizing psychotherapy in a way, or at least up to a certain point when, right, we are supposed to embrace this dark side?
I don't think I'm criticizing psychotherapy. I think I believe in psychotherapy in a sense, but I think it's the character in the show, this Ren Yishen, I would say. I think he just has a very warped sense of what psychology is about, right? His perspective is that we should embrace the darker side and then be who we are supposed to be. But Ching is saying that we are actually inherently good in a sense. So I think it's just a perspective that causes the whole entire shift in good and evil, I would say. Yeah.
徐生，你覺得人性本身係善啦，定係惡㗎？
I wanted to ask, there is this other character that is very briefly mentioned only in the film, which is this tumor that she has.
Yes, right.
And so maybe you want to elaborate a little bit on that, because it's only suggested, and then the viewer is sort of left with this idea.
I think the reason why that particular thing was suggested was because I personally felt when I was reading the script that I think a lot of times as an audience, we kind of want to have some answers. And when I first read the script and I thought that if she had this special ability just to be able to get into the mind, it might throw an audience off in a certain sense, right? But by giving it plausible reason that this could happen, then it makes the audience kind of guess whether everything is in her mind or she really does have such a power in that sense. So it was just briefly touched on to just, to just give a different perspective of it. Yeah. I actually didn't want to make it more like a X-Men mutant kind of a situation. It kind of takes away the whole believability of it in that sense. Yeah. So yeah.
At some point, there is also in terms of visuals and background, there's the Catholic theme that arises. You see, like there's this church scene with the angel wings and so on. Was that just for the visuals of it, or is there more background to it?
I think initially when the scriptwriter wrote this, it was inspired by a couple of shows, I think one of the shows that was inspired by it was Hannibal. Is it? If I'm not wrong, it was Hannibal. But I think it also says a lot about sometimes how you can take spirituality in a totally different direction, a little bit more extreme in that sense. Because sometimes spiritualities like this actually can go into a very cult-like kind of a status. So I think maybe that was just a nod to how sometimes this can go a bit too far. And that's about it, I would say. Yeah.
And on that point, on the visuals, I personally think that the movie is really beautifully made.
Thank you.
The camera work is great. There's this very nice color palette that you work with. And is it true that you were first approached for the movie to be the director of photography, cinematographer?
Yeah, I think because initially a friend of mine was supposed to be doing this movie. And then he approached me to be a DOP for this one. I dabble in DOP actually. I'm more of a director than anything else, but I think we were close enough that he trusts me to be able to do something like this. And then I guess maybe scheduling conflicts, the whole deal came apart, and then I was free. And then I think they approached me to see whether I'm interested in directing this as well. So that's how it actually went that way. Yeah.
And since you're from Singapore, but the movie's taking place in Hong Kong, was that always the case? Was the plan always to shoot it in Hong Kong?
Oh, no, I think it wasn't. I think initially it was supposed to be a Singapore movie, but I think there was some deal that happened where I think they wanted to make this more of an international story because the story was pretty good. So I think they brought it over to their Hong Kong branch, I would say. And they like the idea, and it kind of fits their culture in that sense because of all the things that's happening over there. So they thought of making it into a Hong Kong movie. So yeah, I was surprised myself actually. Initially, this is my first debut movie, so to do this in an overseas market is a little bit challenging. It's quite frightening actually, I would say.
Can I just add something to that? Sorry, this is Carol from MN2.
Hi, Carol.
So with regards to the movie to be shot in Hong Kong, we had 4 projects, and this was one of the projects where we worked with Hong Kong scriptwriters. And for this particular project, almost right from the start, we actually did want to shoot it in Hong Kong. And it was after consultation with our colleagues in Hong Kong that we had to go ahead and say, yeah, let's just make it a Hong Kong movie. Because when I brought this project to BIFFF in 2019, it was by then, before the shoot, it was already decided that we did want to have it as a Hong Kong movie. Out of the 4 projects, we wanted to have 2 projects as a Hong Kong movie, and Shadow's content was one of the most suitable as a Hong Kong content.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Thank you very much for
Yes, thank you, Carol. And you do get that look and feel a little bit with the the police investigation theme and so on. It reminds a little bit of other Hong Kong movies, maybe indeed. And what about the casting then? Are all the actors? I mean, where exactly did you find them and how?
The actors were actually proposed by the Hong Kong side because they know their artists well. So I think they kind of pitched the story to a couple of actors. And in the end, Steffi Tang, Philip, they were all kind of interested in it because of the story itself. So yeah, I guess that's where it came in from. I mean, we did pitch to other actors, but some of them declined, and these are the cast that we have. And I think they're really good cast, actually. I'm happy to have them in this show because they really brought it to a different level, I would say. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they were actually very good, and of course, going back a little bit to the actual story, they also have to bring this kind of loneliness that is being felt because we talked about this dark side psychology and so on before, but there's also, of course, the loneliness, I suppose. As you can see, that both the children in the story and the elderly are sort of abandoned, right, in society, right?
Yep, it is. It's pretty much.
And so they did you work with them to sort of really portray this cycle of abandonment and violence?
I don't think I did. I think this credit goes to the writer itself. I think they did enough research and everything for it. I think the original writer, Kai Xiang, came up with the idea of abandonment and isolation as well. But I think when it was brought over the Hong Kong side, they kind of tweaked it for the culture. And it's quite evident in Hong Kong in itself, with all the housing crises and stuff like that going on. So I think it fits the culture in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of abandonment, it's not the only modern subject that's broached. There's also suicide. There's also euthanasia. So from that point of view, it seems to really reflect modern society itself. Was that, in some view, also your goal to not only make a good thriller, something that's interesting from the point of view of the story itself, but also to reflect society?
Maybe suicide, but not euthanasia, I would say. But in that sense, I would say in this story, right, we were not really kind of emphasizing on the idea of suicide or euthanasia. I think it's a byproduct of the story itself, in the sense where these characters were influenced into it. So it was not specifically a choice that they made. They may have it in the back of their mind, but I would say it's because of the influence that brought about that decision. I mean, these are very deeply personal decisions to make in real life. And I don't think, as a filmmaker, I don't want to kind of, how would you say this? I don't want to make it such an obvious thing in this story, I would say. So a lot of it is got to do with how, I think what the writer was trying to say is that if you push someone to a certain extent, sometimes you are forced to make decisions that are not exactly the best, which is why the story is about good and evil, in the sense where we are all capable of this particular side of it. And one thing that the whole entire show is trying to say is also about how the society itself influences your decision, right? So, like, for example, in the first case where this guy called I can't remember his name right now, but he committed suicide because after killing his family, right? So it's because of the fact that the family itself was giving him a certain pressure that he decided to get into. I'm not saying that it's a good thing that he's doing this, but it's an influence, is like a cycle that's happening, and it happens in each and every one of the crimes. Even in the cult one is also based on a past that has happened. So I think what the show was trying to say is that because of this cycle of influence that's happening, it kind of pushes us to choose between good and evil. And that's why there is no good and evil. We are all capable of it anytime, right? Yeah.
Okay, and I think this kind of brings us to the sort of wrap-up questions of our Q&A, which is, what about the future? What is next in store from you guys?
Me personally? Oh.
Yes.
Well, I do want to do more feature films, that's for sure. I think I'm working on a couple of ideas right now. Hopefully MM2 will pick them up. Other than that, I am developing a couple of TV series. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think it's because of the pandemic at this point in time. Yeah, everything is kind of like, plateauing. So it's a good year to start developing new content, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, but it's challenging as well, I suppose.
It is.
I see. Okay, and we also have a traditional wrap-up question, which is basically, if you had the total freedom, like an unlimited budget to do your dream project, what would it be?
Wow, I mean, nobody has ever asked that question before. It's a luxury.
You never had the opportunity to think about it.
Yeah, I never imagined it that far. But I mean, if anything, I would love to do some epic trilogy or something, something fun to do, something that just like a true ride or anything, something entertaining, maybe like another Lord of the Rings or another.
But lots of visual effects, maybe.
Maybe try something new, something a little bit more fun to play with. But I think other than that, I think story is still king. As long as the story is good enough, that should be fun. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, I think that brings us to the end of this Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, and we hope we can maybe next year or soon actually welcome you in Brussels and also give you a taste of the amazing BIFFF audience and the way they receive movies. We can only hope for that. It would be great fun to have you. And
yeah, great.
So Glenn, thank you very much for this Q&A, for this time. Thank you as well to Harmony and Carol.
Thank you so much.
人好自私。越係邪惡嘅人，就越想扮好人。